Welcome in to CBS News 24/7. I'm Juliette Goodrich. Here's a look at the four big headlines we're following for you at 4. Wall Street rallies following a strong jobs report, but you could be paying more for some goods online. How a now closed loophole is raising those costs. A key witness in the Karen Reed murder trial back on the stand today. Jennifer McCabe's testimony on the phone calls made the night a Boston police officer was found dead.
I believe I called it a butt dial.
And it's not just one butt dial, correct?
There could be multiple, yes.
All eyes will be on the ceremonial chimney at the Sistine Chapel next week as the conclave gets ready to elect a new pope. The preparations underway right now at the Vatican. And we're watching Wall Street, where stocks climb on a solid jobs report. The Dow up more than 500 points. The S&P 500 notched its 9th consecutive day of gains, its longest winning streak in 20 years. So let's take a look at our interactive stock market heat map. This is brought to you by FinViz. It shows the top 500 stocks. As you can see, it is a lot of green. CBS News Money Watch correspondent Kelly O'Grady joins us live from the New York Stock Exchange. Hello, Kelly. After weeks of on and off tariff turmoil, stocks ending the week on a high note. So let's walk us through what happened today.
Jules, I love that you mentioned that stat that the S&P 500 has its longest winning streak in over 20 years. Doesn't mean the biggest gain, but that shows you that there has been momentum after such a roller coaster ride. Now, a couple things that drove this gain today. The first was that we heard from the Chinese Commerce Department that they are evaluating trade negotiations, speaking with the U.S. Of course, we've heard things from both sides that have been a little bit contradictory, but that definitely made futures pop this morning. The other thing, of course, is that we got a strong jobs report. The economy added 177,000 jobs in April. That was well above what was expected. And what this tells you is even with all of this tariff uncertainty, businesses, small and large, they are still hiring. The unemployment rate held steady at 4.2%. Now, I did do some digging because you know me, I'm a nerd. I went behind that headline number. There were a couple things that sort of spell potential slowdown in the future. A lot of that gain was driven by transportation and warehousing. Remember that GDP number we talked about on Wednesday? A lot of imports coming into the U.S. So that tracks with the fact that there were jobs added in that sector, making sure there were people to fill the warehouses. So all those goods are coming into the country. The other one is leisure and hospitality, and we've heard from companies like Airbnb, the airlines, that they could see a weakening consumer this summer. But overall, the fundamentals of the economy are strong. You've got inflation lowering, the jobs market still solid. It was a good report.
I would call you detail-oriented. That's what you are. And President Trump ended a Chinese tariff loophole. So let's talk about that, how it could impact online shopping orders.
All right, this is called the de minimis exemption. It ends today. And basically before this, any package that was under $800 was allowed to come into the country and it would be duty-free. Now those that are coming from China and Hong Kong, that exemption goes away. That loophole is closed. So think Shein, Temu, those e-commerce sort of direct-to-consumer sites that are getting a lot of those products coming from China. You may have already noticed if you went on the website, they say that they have preemptively raised prices because of these tariffs that are now going to apply to those goods. On the bright side, though, small business in this country, Jules, that I've talked to love this because they always have to order in bulk. They've always been paying those duties because, of course, they're ordering things that are over $800.
Leaving us on the bright side, Kelly O'Grady, thanks so much. To the White House now, where President Trump rolls out a budget blueprint calling for sharp cuts to federal spending. Trump's so-called skinny budget proposals, $163 billion in cuts to education, housing, healthcare, and more, while boosting spending on national security. So CBS News White House reporter Aaron Navarro joining us now to talk about the cuts and what kind of programs might be impacted. Hi, Aaron.
Hi, good to be with you. Yeah, it's about a 23% cut for non-defense discretionary spending. So that cut does not apply to defense defense spending, military spending, mandatory spending for things like Medicare or Social Security. What that cut will apply to are education, several child care programs, environmental programs, anything sort of out of line with the administration's agenda, anything they call, quote, woke or believe that states could handle instead, seem to be the first priority in terms of cuts in this, quote, skinny budget. Some of the numbers, a 55% cut to the Environmental Protection Agency compared to the 2025 levels, $18 billion cut from the National Institutes of Health, cutting billions in what remains of foreign aid from the United States, as well as an increase when it comes to immigration enforcement, about $175 billion increase there. But just a quick reminder, this is a budget proposal, request. Republicans in Congress have already panned this a little bit, and usually Republicans in Congress, as it goes through the House and Senate, rework this budget. But it is a sign of where the White House's priorities are, especially when it comes to immigration and kind of shrinking the size of the federal government. One new thing this time around, of course, is DOGE, which has already acted on behalf of the executive branch to make cuts without congressional approval. If the White House does not necessarily get what they want from Congress in terms of a budget, could potentially see DOGE take further action.
Also, Trump signed an executive order to end federal funding of NPR and PBS. What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, this order directs all federal agencies, but specifically the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, to cease any federal funding for NPR and PBS. The Corporation for Public Broadcasting is a nonprofit that was created by Congress to support public radio and TV. They had actually filed a lawsuit earlier this week against President Trump for removing 3 members of its 5-person board. In a statement reacting to this executive order last night from the White House and President Trump, CPB said that they are not a federal executive agency subject to the president's authority, and that Congress directly authorized and funded them to be a private corporation wholly independent of the federal government. In a response, NPR called the order, quote, an affront to the First Amendment rights of NPR and local stations across the country. And that's perhaps where this potential cut and elimination of federal funding could hurt NPR, is when it comes to those local stations. 2% of their overall budget comes from federal grants. PBS, that number is a bit higher at 16%, but certainly could expect to see litigation potentially as they react to this cut.
Aaron Navarro. Aaron, thank you. We also continue to follow tension between Harvard University and President Trump. Earlier this week, the president threatened to pull all grants from the school. He ramped up that rhetoric earlier today on social media. He had this to say on Truth Social: "We are going to be taking away Harvard's tax-exempt status. It's what they deserve. It's all part of the ongoing feud with the Ivy League school that has included a freeze in billions in federal funding for Harvard." Harvard University released a statement saying, in part, such an unprecedented action would endanger our ability to carry out our educational mission. It would result in diminished financial aid for students, abandonment of critical medical research programs, and lost opportunities for innovation. The unlawful use of this instrument more broadly would have grave consequences for the future of higher education in America. An oil spill off the Louisiana coast, releasing thousands of gallons of oil. The rush to stop the leak next. You're watching CBS News 24/7. Our map takes us to Idaho, where police work to figure out what went wrong after a deadly highway crash near Yellowstone National Park. Police say a pickup truck and a tour van collided, and both vehicles caught fire. The driver of the pickup truck and 6 people inside the van died. 8 people were taken to the hospital with injuries. The landlord who killed a 6-year-old Palestinian-American boy and severely injured his mother has been sentenced to 53 years in prison. Joseph Shuba was found guilty of murder, attempted murder, and hate crime charges back in February. Prosecutors say that Shuba targeted the family because of their Muslim faith in response to the war between Israel and Hamas. The family was renting rooms from Shuba at the time of this attack. Our CBS News Chicago affiliate has reaction from the family.
He was staring at me. It's like He wanted to say something, but he didn't. But yes, when I looked at his face, it was hard. It was hard just to look at his face, the way he was looking at it.
Had he actually said something?
No.
I mean, had he actually, though, what kind of solace would that have given you and the family?
A little bit peace of mind for explanation, just why did you do that? I mean, his father is right here. Like I said, his father, one of the reasons his father did not stand in front of the judge for the statement because of the emotion. Imagine if he stood there, maybe he would have done something crazy. I mean, it's not that easy. So we needed that explanation for just a little peace of mind.
Mahmoud, his father has told me before that he wants Medea to stand for something across the country. What's your message to the rest of the country today after reaching this verdict on this hate crime?
Unfortunately, lately there's been a lot of hate crimes around the whole country, not just Wadia. Wadia was the first to start with. There was a lot of hate crimes, and we needed that to stop. We need people to understand other people at first. Don't just come up and judge. We've seen a lot of hate crimes around the country.
Right now, the Coast Guard is scrambling to contain an oil spill off the Louisiana coast. An underwater well spewed a leak, pushing thousands of gallons of oil to the surface.
It is actively releasing, so it is actively spraying into the environment. We have taken additional measures to try and reduce that spray as much as possible to make sure that we have the best efforts to contain what is being released.
The well is in a remote location, complicating efforts to plug the leak and stop the spread. WWL Louisiana's Amelia Strahan traveled to the scene to get a better look at the spill.
About 20 miles off the coast of Venice, green brush turns black as oil and gas rain down on the delta.
This is a significant spill. It's still going on.
For days, gallons of oil have gushed out of an old well in Plaquemines Parish. It's a shocking scene WWL Louisiana saw up close on Thursday with eco tour guide Richie Blink.
A lot of these old fields in the delta here are really old. There's many hundreds, if not thousands, in the Birdfoot Delta in various states of disrepair.
Over the course of his career, Blink has worked on multiple oil spills.
It's a very serious spill, and the public needs to know that.
And he thinks the Coast Guard isn't being transparent about the ecological marks something of this scale leaves in its wake.
We're going to lose land and hurricane protection over this and habitat because of this.
We weren't at the spill long before we were asked to leave. Officials said we were too close, but there weren't any signs or ropes to indicate a cleanup perimeter.
Lieutenant with the U.S. Coast Guard Philip Vanderwhite confirmed the old well was capped and abandoned over a decade ago. So what caused it to break now is unclear.
The cause of the discharge is under investigation, so we don't know exactly what caused this to happen. And I assure you that the Coast Guard, our top priority right now is remediation and to stop the source.
So far, crews' around-the-clock efforts have been unsuccessful, and Vanderwhite explains why plugging an old well isn't an easy process.
The well is older, and because of that, it's a complex site as well, shallow water, challenging conditions.
The Coast Guard ramped up response efforts Thursday, bringing in federal help. But Richie hopes the help doesn't leave when the orange sheen on the water dissipates.
Afterwards, we're going to need to rebuild some land to make up for these losses. These ecosystems are going to be taken out of service for a while.
In Plaquemines Parish, Amelia Strahan, WWL Louisiana.
The CDC reports 216 children died of the flu so far this flu season. That is the highest number since the swine flu pandemic 15 years ago. A fellow with the American Academy of Pediatrics says there are likely several factors that go into the increase, but a big one is a fewer number of children getting the flu shot. While the flu shot doesn't always prevent symptoms, research shows it's highly effective at preventing flu hospitalizations and deaths. The Alec Baldwin movie Rust is now in a limited number of theaters and on demand today. It comes about 4 years after Baldwin accidentally shot and killed cinematographer Helena Hutchins on the New Mexico set. The criminal case against Baldwin was dropped, but the armorer who loaded the bullet into the gun was convicted of involuntary manslaughter. She is serving 18 months in prison. Hutchins' family told the crew they wanted them to finish the movie in her honor. Powerful storms spawn tornadoes in parts of the U.S. The communities hit hard, and where the storm is headed next. Stay with us. You are watching CBS News 24/7. Take a look at this video. It's capturing a funnel cloud passing through Lubbock, Texas, Wednesday. The National Weather Service later reported a landspout in the area and asked people to move indoors if they were in the storm's path. CBS News correspondent Jason Allen joins us from Fort Worth, Texas. Jason, thanks for being here. What are you seeing on the ground right now?
I'll tell you what, it has really been an active week here in this part of the country. Those isolated tornadoes that you're showing and talking about, we've had those for the last few days, and I'm glad that we're joining you now here in Fort Worth and not, say, 45 minutes or an hour ago when there was heavy rain here and thunder and lightning and the wind was gusting. A much better situation here on the ground now, but Fort Worth, Dallas, and some other cities across Texas down to the south, Waco, College Station, and down toward Houston, definitely not out of the woods yet, with some of those storms still building as this system heads across the southeast. Let's show you some of the immediate impacts that we're seeing here in Fort Worth. I'm going to draw your attention down here to the Trinity River, which is pretty full for this time of year. Fort Worth has seen a couple inches above normal rainfall, a couple inches just in the last month. You may see some piles of debris floating in the river. No flooding issues here, whereas the levees are keeping it out of the downtown area and kind of holding the river in. But the lakes here are full, a couple feet above normal. One of the lakes up to the northwest of Fort Worth has been closed to all boat traffic, recreational traffic, and that's really to keep any boats from getting out and creating wake that could then get onto the shoreline and potentially flood out any homes that are there. So it's flooding and rain that has mainly been the issue here. In other parts of the state right now, the big concern throughout the day-to-day as those storms continue to build is really hail. That's one of the big ones. So we're talking up to 2-inch in diameter hail. That could be golf ball sized, up to egg-sized hail that could be developing, and not out of the question that we could see some isolated tornadoes again. Thankfully, the tornadoes that we have seen develop this week so far, Jules, they have been in some of those rural areas, but it's always a concern when you see these systems that are going through the more populated areas like they are right now through Waco, down through College Station, and especially some of those cities that are around the Houston metro area. This storm system's still gonna be a problem for many of those cities for the rest of the afternoon and into the evening hours.
Yeah, great detail there. Jason, thank you. All right, let's go to our meteorologist, Darren Peck. We certainly caught Jason at a good time. There was kind of that break in the storm, and that just goes to show how it's hit or miss.
Yes. He pointed out that it's been such a busy week for that part of the country. So I just want to take a moment and show you how we are about to get some help. As we go into the weekend, there's going to be a whole-scale pattern shift in the atmosphere that's going to start lessening the amount of time we're talking about severe weather. First off, a little bit of a setup. Warm water out here in the Gulf, matched with all of the thunderstorms showing up there. That is live radar showing up now across Texas. We're going to come back to the detail on that in one second. But what I want you to see is how this gets better for the weekend. What's going on down here right now for today, this is showing you the amount of energy in the atmosphere to provide severe weather. The deeper the red, the more energy. This is today. We pulled in a lot of warm, moist air from the Gulf, and there's clearly a line here going through Texas. Here's good news. I'm going to show you what happens over the next 36 hours now. We're going to clear out today. Let's get a wide view looking down, and we're going to take it and scour most of this out. This is one way to visualize how the amount of energy available in the atmosphere to continually provide the severe weather is going to get cleared out into the weekend. Not to say you won't get some rain. I'll show you that coming up in 1 second in the Northeast. But you're not going to have the amount of available energy to keep giving us all of this significant weather. But if we come back to the moment, match it with our radar up there going through Texas, everywhere in pink on here has got a severe thunderstorm watch. And when you look within there, you can see the little orange boxes are actually severe thunderstorm warnings. So this is what Jason was talking about for tonight. Here comes the good news. If we look at where the severe weather potential is now and compare that with where it's going to be tomorrow, way less. That's Saturday. Yellow is like maybe you got a chance for a few thunderstorms, but probably not even severe. Look at Sunday. This is the Storm Prediction Center's map now for where the areas of concern for severe dangerous weather are going to be on Sunday, and there aren't any. So we needed a break. I think having Jason there giving us a front row seat of what's still happening today still has to be taken seriously for the rest of today And then for the weekend, things are going to quiet down.
All right, but thanks for that good news, that little, silver lining there.
Bet.
All right, thanks so much. New body cam footage released of Kilmar Abrego Garcia being pulled over by police. How this video is now at the center of a legal debate over his deportation. Next. Tennessee Highway Patrol released this body cam footage of an encounter with Kilmar Abrego Garcia. This is from 2022. They pulled Garcia over for speeding. Let's take a look.
You got a bunch of people in here, don't you?
It's one for sit. Yes. Go back to work.
Gotcha. Where are you working at?
Where?
Where?
San Luis, Missouri.
Missouri?
Yes, sir.
Gotcha. Okay.
But I'm from Maryland.
Abrego Garcia told the trooper he was driving the passengers to a construction project and that the vehicle belonged to his boss. Back in April, the Department of Homeland Security released a report that is on the traffic stop saying officers suspected Abrego Garcia of human trafficking, but he was not charged with anything. So CBS News Department of Justice correspondent Scott McFarland joining us live now to talk about all of this. These depositions actually are set to be complete in this case. So how does this new video change things, if anything?
It's not clear those videos are going to change anything with the legal case, but they sure could infuse the political arguments that have been saturating this case. And in fact, they already are. The White House press secretary pushed out a statement about those videos, trying to argue again, as the White House has for weeks, that this was a righteous and justified deportation, even though the Department of Justice has acknowledged this was a mistaken deportation, that Abrego Garcia was sent to El Salvador despite a previous court order protecting him from being sent there, a country he fled years earlier. The legal case, though, has, as you said, depositions completed today and deadlines next week for the administration to answer questions about why that mistake was made, what the effort is to facilitate Abrego Garcia's return in the coming days, and what his condition is now, where he is and how he's doing. Those are all questions that have been posed by the judge who ordered Abrego Garcia returned. And so far, the administration has not provided the court satisfactory answers. We'll see if that changes with the deadlines in place for information next week.
We also know a federal judge ruled the Trump administration's use of the Alien Enemies Act to deport Venezuelans out of Texas happens to be unlawful. So can you break down that particular decision?
An important decision, not just about what was said, but from where the decision came. This was a Southern District of Texas, a Brownsville, Texas judge appointed by President Trump in the first term, who said these Alien Enemies Act deportations, these 18th century emergency wartime power deportations that come without full due process, are unlawful because it's an overreach by the administration, by the executive branch, that has not proven there is a foreign invasion underway that would trigger the Alien Enemies Act. But that it comes from Texas is noteworthy because in so many cases, the Trump administration has been moving would-be deportees from wherever they are to Louisiana and Texas to expedite the deportations, presumably under the idea the judges will be more sympathetic in those jurisdictions. This Southern District of Texas judge ruled otherwise.
All right, Scott McFarland. Scott, thank you. To Capitol Hill, where lawmakers react to President Trump's request for sharp federal funding cuts. So Trump rolled out a so-called skinny budget proposal calling for $163 billion in cuts to education, housing, health care, and more, while boosting spending on national security. So let's bring in CBS News congressional correspondent Nicole Killian with more on this. Now, Nicole, ultimately, it's up to Congress to approve these spending levels, right? So how are lawmakers reacting to this budget blueprint?
Yeah, that's right. Well, as you can imagine, it's pretty much along party lines with Republicans praising this budget, particularly those who are looking to do some belt tightening, while many Democrats, of course, are decrying some of these cuts, particularly whether it involves things like education, the Department of Health and Human Services, foreign aid, and other targets. But look, this is consistent with kind of what the Trump administration has laid out thus far in terms of some of its spending priorities, in terms of prioritizing things like defense, the border, and other areas, while making these cuts to issues issues like foreign aid and education. Nonetheless, certainly likely to spark a lot of heated debate here on Capitol Hill.
Let's talk about Mike Waltz and his upcoming confirmation hearing for the role of ambassador to the UN. So with his name front and center in the Signal Gate scandal, what can we expect to hear from lawmakers?
Yeah, well, just to be clear, obviously we don't want to be too premature at this point because nothing has been scheduled in the form of any type of confirmation hearing, although that is likely the next step at some point. And obviously with many of these nominees, we often see them come up here to Capitol Hill to meet with lawmakers who may be instrumental in the process ahead of any potential hearing. So that really is the next step in earnest, if you will. That will be led by the Senate Foreign Relations panel if and when they do set something up. But look, many Democrats have already said that they expect this hearing, if and when it happens, to be pretty disastrous for Mike Waltz. It's certainly a ripe opportunity for Senate Democrats, many of whom want to keep the spotlight on this Signal Gate controversy and what they believe was really gawking error on the part of the administration that really has remained unchecked. There is a bipartisan request for an Inspector General investigation, so we are still awaiting the outcome of that report. You know, many Republicans are for the most part, still remaining somewhat supportive of Mike Waltz from the standpoint of he is a former member of Congress, a former congressional Republican, understanding that, yes, while this may have been an error, at the same time, they trust Mike Waltz's general capabilities. So from that standpoint, does that make him more confirmable in the end? Potentially, but again, we will have to see how the process plays out.
Nicole Kelly. And Nicole, thank you. The U.S. and Ukraine sign a rare earth minerals agreement that is expected to give Washington access to the country's critical minerals and other natural resources. So what are they and how are they used? Rare earth minerals are a group of 17 elements used to make magnets that turn power into motion. They're essential to things like cell phones, hard drives, electric vehicles, and other electronics. And they are a subset of a group of so-called critical minerals. So looking at the critical mineral resources in Ukraine, the country has deposits of 22 of the 34 minerals identified by the European Union as critical. Critical minerals are essential for industries such as defense, high-tech appliances, aerospace, and green energy. So we talked to Gracelyn Beskarin, director of the Critical Minerals Security Program at the Center for Strategic and International Studies, earlier about all of this.
So Ukraine has a number of things. So they have titanium, which is really critical for the defense industry. They have 4 lithium reserves. One of the complexities of those lithium reserves is that 2 of the 4 are actually on Russian occupied land. Graphite. And one of the big things that's come into play are rare earths, which are actually a subset of 17 critical minerals. And, for us in the U.S., rare earths have taken center stage because China imposed export controls on them about a month ago. The difficulty is this, we don't have a modern mapping of these rare earths. Everything from dysprosium and terbium to neodymium and scandium. These are really critical for defense technology, semiconductors, cars. So what we see is a few challenges, like I mentioned earlier, is we have these resources, but we have to build a lot of energy infrastructure. Mining uses about 16% of the world's electricity. A lot of that energy infrastructure has been damaged by the war. Mapping, and then there is a security risk because we don't have that peace deal.
Our monitors take us to Vietnam, where celebrations this week marked 50 years since the end of the Vietnam War. The fall of Saigon, about 2 years after Washington withdrew its last combat troops from the country, marked the end of a long conflict. That created an extraordinary effort to evacuate Vietnamese children from the region, many of them to California. CBS News Bay Area's Ann Makovic has more on Operation Baby Lift.
And let's check right back in with Andy Park and Lynn Joyner at the Oakland International Airport as they continue to bring those 57 children off of that plane. And Andy, if you can hear me, you're back on live television again.
50 years ago, an historic event unfolded late at night.
I am right at the foot of the stairway now, and you can probably see that little one who just came down. The people going up, again, are the blanket brigade. They're taking up blankets, they wrap a child in it, and bring them down.
On board this World Airways plane, dozens of young children airlifted out of Vietnam. Among them, a baby girl promised to Ralph and Marilyn Norberg.
She looks like a healthy, normal child.
The Norbergs 50 years ago and the Norbergs today.
It was just such a defining moment in our lives because we'd wanted to have children and we're having a hard time. And when she came, it was just such a gift.
It's really, really amazing to meet our first child and get to know her.
From the airport, the children were loaded up on a bus and driven to San Francisco. The vast majority were processed here at the Presidio Army Base in this building known as Harmon Hall. The Presidio switchboard was swamped with compassionate calls.
Calls offering everything from clothes and blankets from Arkansas to people from Alaska and Brooklyn who want to adopt children.
But it was quite a mob scene because we had press everywhere.
When the Norbergs first met Wendy,
she was actually very, very easygoing.
She was adorable. She still is.
Wendy Norberg 50 years ago.
Happy birthday, dear Wendy. Happy.
And Wendy Norberg today, celebrating her 51st birthday.
I view myself definitely as being American.
Wendy went back to Vietnam 10 years ago and saw her orphanage, but says the Bay Area is home. As for Operation Baby Lift, she doesn't dwell on it.
I don't really feel like I'm part of it. I just every 10 years get reminded.
We're just so proud of her, and excuse me, it's been such a time. She's such a wonderful family member.
Wendy is an accomplished photographer. Most recently, she's captured images of Bay Area activism, people striving to change the world.
I'm not necessarily picking a side. I'm documenting a moment in history.
Around us are just a swarm of volunteers, doctors, nurses.
Wendy's historic journey was broadcast live on TV. Now, 50 years later, she's on the other side of the lens. And we asked Wendy about her biological family. We know a lot of people have delved into genealogy websites trying to find them. She says she has no interest in that. She is just happy with the way everything worked out.
Yes, and her family is too.
Yes.
All right, Ann, thank you so much. The defense presses a key witness in Karen Reed's murder trial. The tense moments in court next. You are watching CBS News 24/7. Now to a Massachusetts courtroom where a key witness in the Karen Reed trial is back on the stand. The defense continued to press Jennifer McCabe on the call she made to Boston police officer John O'Keefe the night he died. Let's take a listen.
I think I put my phone in my pocket. I think I inadvertently maybe have called him.
What did you call it at the last hearing?
I believe I called it a butt dial.
And it's not just one butt dial, correct?
There could be multiple, yes.
7 butt dials in the course of 19 minutes, less than 20 minutes, correct?
That evening, I wasn't paying attention to butt dials or calls.
Joining us live now is CBS News Boston's Christina Rex covering this trial. Christina, the defense questioned McCabe for hours. So what else happened in court other than that?
Well, Jules, honestly, it really was just all about Jen McCabe this week. There were 2 other witnesses who took the stand, but their time was minimal compared to the 3 days that Jennifer McCabe was on the stand. Just a reminder for any viewers watching, McCabe is one of the women who was with Karen Reed when she discovered John O'Keefe's body that snowy morning. Now, the defense paints Jen McCabe as a manipulator who maybe crafted the so-called conspiracy to frame Karen Reed in this case, and they spent 3 days of cross-examination trying to grill McCabe on lies. They claimed she lied to federal investigators. You also heard that soundbite where they claimed she made 7 phone calls to John O'Keefe on the night when he was supposed to come to that after party, and then lied allegedly and called those butt dials. Here's one other really stunning moment from court today where the defense attorney really focused on why, while she was outside with a man dying on the front lawn, why Jen McCabe did not run into the house to try to get help.
Did you think your sister might have been in peril? Did you think to go inside the house and check that they're okay?
I had no reason to think that they weren't okay.
You had no reason to believe they weren't okay. A man was dead or dying on their lawn, and your sister's not answering the phone. and nobody is coming out to the chaos of Karen Reed screaming on the front lawn. You didn't think there was some reason to believe they could have been in peril?
I didn't, because your client was screaming she hit him. She had a cracked taillight. She was crying she hit him. I didn't, but my focus... Can I finish, please?
You had solved the crime right then and there. You solved the whole case.
No, I didn't. I knew John never came in the house, so I had no concern for anyone's safety inside the house.
Pretty stunning moment there. I will say, though, that was the end of Jen McCabe's cross-examination. And up until then, over the course of nearly 3 days, it was pretty calm. That was really the most tense it got this time around, Jules.
Okay, that snippet was there. Okay, that was tense. So you've been following this case from the beginning. So what makes this trial different from last year's trial?
Well, this trial is notably different in terms of strategy. So there's a new prosecutor on the case, a special prosecutor, Hank Brennan, hired just to try this case. So far, we're about 8 days into his case. There's been a completely different order of witnesses and a completely different technique, including that in between many witnesses, that special prosecutor, Hank Brennan, plays a clip on a TV for jurors to watch of Karen Reed's past media interviews. So Karen Reed's own words have been played out loud repeatedly in court. That did not happen at all during the first trial.
Christina Rex. Christina, thank you so much. News we're following around the world. Actor Russell Brand appeared in a London courtroom today to face charges of rape and sexual assault. The incidents allegedly happened between 1999 and 2005. 4 women are accusing Brand. He did not enter a plea but confirmed his name and address with the judge. He was freed on conditional bail until his next hearing on May 30th. A Soviet spacecraft launched in 1972 is expected to make an uncontrolled re-entry around May 10th. For context, old satellites and other space junk re-enter Earth's atmosphere nearly every day, but they usually burn up or operators intentionally ditch them in a remote part of the world. This spacecraft is different because no one is in control of it, and it was built to survive re-entry. The odds of it hitting anyone or anything are small, but not zero. The Sistine Chapel is being prepared for the conclave to choose the next pope. You can see workers installing the chimney where ballots will be burned after cardinals vote for their pick. CBS News foreign correspondent Chris Livesay has the latest from Rome.
Well, here in St. Peter's Square, that mood of mourning over the death of Pope Francis has shifted to one of excitement over who his successor is going to be. Now, you couldn't ask for a better vantage point than this one. Just over my shoulder, you can see the Sistine Chapel, where that white smoke is eventually going to come out announcing Habemus Papam. We have a pope.
It's fantastic. It's really historical, isn't it?
I love this country. I love Italy. I'm Italian myself.
The way it works is the cardinals, more than 130 of them from around the world, they write their votes on a piece of paper and then they're burned. And if there's a 2/3 consensus that's reached, well, then you've got the white smoke saying we have a pope. But if they don't reach that 2/3 consensus, it's black smoke. Now, typically, it's taken 2 or 3 days of voting in order to arrive at a pope. At least that's been the case for the last several papacies. But this conclave could take a little more time because there are so many cardinals from far-flung places around the world that Francis himself named in places like Mongolia and Papua New Guinea that we just don't know a lot about, and we don't know how they're going to vote. Some of them might even struggle to communicate with the other cardinals because their Italian might not be very good. So it may take longer than your typical conclave, and we might have a wild card, a candidate, so to speak, a pope that nobody saw coming. So there's a lot of guessing going on as to who the next pope is going to be. Chris Livesay, CBS News, Rome.
Let's bring up our TikTok tube. Our CBS News social team has so much great content, including an incredible rescue out of Texas. A Good Samaritan jumped into action to save 2 children from drowning in a river in Houston after a car with their family inside plunged into the water. So let's take a look.
On his way home from a job site this past Friday,
Cuando vi un carro a la mano izquierda que estaba flotando.
Augustin Garcia Alvarez says he saw the car just floating in the San Jacinto River, not knowing what had taken place moments before he arrived. Authorities say the victim's car had stopped in this area with the gravel on Friday afternoon before it accelerated right into the river. A mother and her 3 children were inside.
Y atrás de mi troca traigo una cuerda que es la que usamos para el trabajo.
Without a second thought, this Good Samaritan says he grabbed a rope from his toolbox, tied it around his waist, and had a second man hold on as he dove into the water when he couldn't get the car's doors open.
Y los niños me gritaban que rompiera el vidrio, decían broke the window, me decían. Entonces otras personas que llegaron ahí me aventaron un bate.
Says another bystander threw him a baseball bat and he broke the car's rear window. He was then able to grab Crystal Japu's 5- and 7-year-old children and bring them to safety. He says the older child even knew how to swim.
Que también fue muy grande que creo que la jovencita, la niña de 7 años, sabía nadar poquito.
After that, he says the car started to sink with Japu and her 1-year-old daughter Anna still inside.
Doy gracias a Dios, a mi Padre que Jehová, que pudimos rescatar a esos dos jovencitos. Y es lo que me siento a la vez un poco contento en mi persona, pero triste en mi corazón porque se perdieron 2 vidas y no se pudo hacer nada.
Our social team has so much great content like this, so please follow us at the handle CBS News. The biggest names in golf will tee off in the U.S. Open in about a month in Texas, but a Tennessee teen could be joining them on the course. Meet Raymond Rebel. The 14-year-old has been competing against and winning against people more than double his age. Take a look.
I just love the challenge and like the work that it takes to be great, and I'm just like addicted to it. I'm just trying to keep really present and just knowing that a lot of people are looking up to me is just really impactful, and it makes me feel really good.
Oh, if he wins the next qualifier, he would be tied with the youngest player to ever compete in the U.S. Open. All right, who needs to just look at puppies right now? Let's go to our newsroom puppy cam and puppy Scoop. Scoop is a service dog in training for canine companions, and she's got a rough assignment today working with our assignment desk editor, Greg. Scoop is in training. Aw, thanks, Scoop.